Now the last piece of this, and this is one that if we're going to actually run it today, we're going to have to change, is the address. And in this case, I'm sending it off to this server at this IP address at port 8545, which would be a Geth server. Now, if we run this with the Ganache CLI testing server on our local system, we probably first of all want the IP address to be localhost. So you'd change it from 192 to 127.0.0.1. And by default, Ganache runs at 9545 instead of 8545. If you're trying to access the internal testing server in Truffle, again, you'd want localhost, which is 127.0.0.1. And its default is 7545. So you might have to tweak this a little bit, but this basically is a script that you can use to pull back a JSON response on what is in a transaction. And part of the information in a transaction is the events that are generated from that transaction. Now, another thing that you'd be interested in would be to find out for a specific account what the balance in that account is. And again, we've covered some of this, but we have this ETH get balance. And this ETH get balance tells us for an account how much it has. And it has two parameters. You see there's the square bracket here and here to indicate these are the parameters. I'm using the same ID equals 1 nonce. And what I send to it is an account number. And I say the account what I want is not in a specific block. The block number is latest. So it's the most recent for that account summed up. So we can go out and find out for any account in Ethereum or any contract that we know what the account is that holds that contract, what is the balance on that account. And again, it has the IP address to send it to, which you'd have to tweak. But that's a good way to find out for that particular account. Like, does it have funds to do this? Or did I try to make a call to some method that is owned by this account and I got back, some unexpected result? One of the first questions I'd ask is, does that account have enough gas to pay for running the contract? So getting the account balance is a pretty critical thing. Now, any kind of a transaction that requires that you spend funds would require that you sign that transaction with a public-private key. With one little exception. There's a way to get around the signature process if you're testing. This only works if you're running your own Ethereum node. But you can unlock an account so that it doesn't require keys. Now, if you unlock accounts on a public network, then what's going to happen is some clever person is going to find your server and they're going to transfer all of their funds to them. Because you unlocked the account. It has no security once you unlock it. So you'd never want to do this on a public account, but on your own private test server, there are lots of times when you want to do something. You want to poke in, you want to tweak something, you want to load a contract. And the most common is what you want to do is you want to load a contract. And that requires spending funds because loading a contract is a transaction. So you want to unlock the account. So you're running a test server and you need to unlock the account. There is a way to do this. You can send an unlock message to it and the account stays unlocked for a period of time in seconds. In this case, I'm specifying 150,000 seconds, which is around 2 days. So I want to load a contract. The first thing I want to do is for that particular account is unlock it. I make this call. It's a little bit different since it's Geth attached, so I'm actually going to run it directly in the Geth console at that particular address. And the package I'm using is personal unlock account. It's only available if you have access to the Geth account. So this would be like when you do Truffle develop, and it runs a copy of Ganache locally, and down at the bottom you're being prompted for an entry. You could run this personal account. If you know the account number, and when you run Truffle develop, it lists out 10 accounts, and you know the password for that account, In Truffle Develop, these are not, they have no password. Or they have the password of password 123 or password, depending on the exact version. You can find the password. But in this particular case, I'm running something where I'm using a testing account, and I send in the account number, and I send in the password. You'll notice that I'm using passwords that are significantly difficult to guess. The way that I generate my passwords, at least, is I have a little script, and if we look at that script, you can say anything you want about OpenSSL in terms of its security and versions and problems that it's had, but there's nothing wrong with using its random number generator to generate passwords. I want to save passwords with it. I do use it for a whole bunch of other things that it's really good at. It is a complicated beast to configure, but if I just want to use a cryptographically secure random number generator to generate a password, you just tell it a random, and base64, it outputs it as letters in base64, and I do it 20 characters long. And I get a password. And pretty much this is how I generate all my passwords these days. I don't necessarily use all 20. Usually I use somewhere in the 14 to 17 characters. But when you see me with a password on something, and that one is a long one because it has funds, that account doesn't really exist, but it's a long one. I do all my Ethereum ones that long. That's the kind of password I'm generating. And I encrypt them, and I don't try to remember them. I cut and paste them. So that every account has a different password, and every time I generate a random, and every one of them is a strong password. Human beings can't generate passwords worth a darn. If you look at the TroyHunt has this I've Been Pawned site, and it has 300 million passwords. I've been collecting passwords that have been leaked for years. Yes, I do have a copy of Ashley Madison's passwords. All 40 million of them. But if you take the passwords and you decrypt them and you sort them, 97% of all passwords are within 10,000 passwords. In fact, you get about 85% of passwords in just 100 passwords. Now, in a cryptographic system that's hashing passwords, like I have a system with 4 GPUs, I can do an account attack with this list of 10,000 most common passwords in under a second. Yeah, crack accounts in under a second. But what's the chance of guessing something like that that's 17 characters long and random, not generated by a human being? Well, first of all, I know that password is not in I've Been Pawned. So 300 million passwords, it is not one of them. And the second thing is it is random and long enough that if you try to brute force attack it by just trying random values, it'll take longer than the existence of the universe with current computers to guess what it is. So basically, it's a circular password. And that's what I'd recommend for any kind of an account that you use in Ethereum or something like IOHK's system Cardano, is that you actually use real passwords that have real strong security all the time. And don't give them to anybody. And also, never, ever, ever, ever lose them. Because if you lose the password, it's over. You will never unlock that account again. So you have to be really careful with them. And you have to store them effectively. So you want to use encryption. You want to make certain that what you're doing with them is the ideal thing for passwords these days is you don't store them on your computer, you write them down offline. Or you use a password manager like 1Password that uses encryption and provides you with good, strong security. There are a slew of these password managers that claim to provide you with security but generate the passwords. As far as I can tell, none of them do a good job. Whereas something like 1Password that isn't like being able to regenerate the passwords does a really, really good job. It so happens that I've been working with IOHK's stuff, and I use their wallet. It is an interesting thing to download and play with. Their wallet is one of the best pieces of software I have seen written in years and years. The user interface is absolutely spectacularly good. It is well thought out. There are all sorts of things that I look at it and I go, wow, that is so well thought out. That is so perfect. And part of it is that they have passwords that are generated from a series of keywords. And you're supposed to write down the keywords. And, at the end of this, they will allow you to print out a paper copy of the passwords as a PDF. And what do you do with it when you print it out? You print it out, it's on your computer, and then there's a copy on your computer that probably isn't encrypted, and, it's sitting there. Well, guess what they did? Not only did they make the PDF so that you have to print it, because they put it upside down, they made it so that it is in a gray color that you can't Xerox it, you can only read the original. I mean, that takes some thinking beforehand. So you just can't bring up the PDF and read it. You really do have to print it. And out of a 27 set series of words, they left the last 9 off, and you have to hand write it on your copy. So they give you the last 9, but it isn't in the PDF, so you can't leak the PDF and give away your password. And they then make you re-enter your password from this list in order, but to prevent spelling errors, they give you little push buttons for all the words. So you just have to click all the buttons in order. So they guarantee that you really did write down your password, you really do have a paper copy, and your PDF copy will not leak your password. It is so clever and so well thought out. I just totally admire this. This is an example of good user interface design if there ever was one. So if nothing else, you should find their password manager, their Daedalus wallet. You should download it. It takes forever to do the download and install because it wants to install a copy of their stuff, but you should give it a try. You should install it, and you should go through their user interface just for the sole purpose of, even if you never use their coin, for the sole purpose of seeing one of the best, well thought out user interfaces of all time. It is worth it as an educational exercise just to play with it, to go, yeah, that is the way it is supposed to be done. They got it right everywhere. No exceptions. So it's called Daedalus. The source code is available. Daedalus wallet, and it's for the ADA chain. We're actually probably going to be using the ADA chain here in a little bit, and their Marlowe system, which is a financial programming language specifically for working with blockchains. But it is an amazing piece of software, truly amazing.